Today I'm going to talk about the oil dilution problems that exist in some modern Honda engines. Now, as you can see here, they call it Earth Dreams technology. And what it basically is will be shown when I take all these stupid beauty covers off, and you can see what's going on with the car's fuel injection system. When you look here on top of the engine where the fuel injectors normally were on the intake, it's gone. Instead, the fuel line goes to this gigantic assembly here, which is a high pressure fuel pump. This is called GDI gasoline engine, for gasoline direct injection. This is the first model sold in the United States by Honda. It creates more horsepower, better gas mileage, but it does it at the expense of very high pressure. Now, this makes the engines much more efficient, but these engines are having a problem with oil dilution. I'm changing the oil on this one. I can smell a reasonable amount of gasoline in it. It's being diluted with gasoline, obviously because of the design. With this gasoline direct injection, there's so much more pressure that the injectors spray into the engine. Obviously, some of it is going to blow by the piston rings and get in the oil. And since these engines are more efficient, they don't get quite as hot. And it's heat that dissipates a lot of these problems. And in really cold weather, you get really bad dilution because you got a combination of efficient engine in a very cold place. Honda tries to blame it on the driver, saying you don't drive the car far enough to warm it up, or it's too cold where you are. But really, the pre-GDI Honda engines did not have this problem. They are coming up with supposed software fixes. The Chinese government isn't allowing to sell these CRVs over there until they fix the problem. They're not accepting Honda's software change. They're saying it's deeper than that. Just like Volkswagen's had a history of their GDI engines carboning up, where you had to take the intake manifold off and then blast the valves with walnut shells with a sandblaster, not using sand, but using walnut shells instead so it doesn't scour anything. These have a problem with diluting the engine oil with gasoline because of the system. Now, I have to say, in Honda's defense, I haven't seen these GDI Honda engines carboning up inside, but obviously their design isn't working out that good. If you take the modern Toyota, a lot of those have dual systems. They got one system that's the port system with injectors on the intake to start the car and run it at certain times and to clean the valves, and then other times it uses a GDI system. And I haven't seen any problems with that system, especially not oil dilution problems like these Hondas are showing up with. And here's the insidious thing about oil dilution problems with gasoline diluting the oil. Dilutes the ability of the oil to lubricate the engine, but it takes a long time to do damage, often long after the warranty period is up. You'd be really leery about buying one of these, especially this Earth Dream technology. But if you do own one of these, take Scotty's advice. Use really high quality, pure synthetic oil and change it regularly. I wouldn't push it to 10,000 miles. I'm going to tell my customer here, change your oil every 5,000 miles on this baby. As you can see here, this takes 0W20 oil, a very thin oil. You already have a thin oil. If you're going to get gasoline diluting that oil, first thing it's going to go will be the engine bearings inside the engine, because that's the softest part. In this case, the 0W20, it has to be a synthetic oil. Those are the only ones available now that are 0W20. I'm using STP because it's on sale down the street. Anyone that says full synthetic is perfectly good to use. Go by the price like I do. I wear gloves because I don't like getting this oil on me, especially gasoline-contaminated oil. Here it comes. Blah. Shoo, and man, I can smell the gasoline in that oil. And of course, don't forget the oil filter, and don't do what one of my customers did once. He was changing the zone, and he forgot to take the plastic cap off the top here, and he blew the engine because the oil didn't go through it. So remove that stupid thing. It's just a dust shield. It doesn't do anything. You got to take it out, get it out of the way. At least they put the oil filter in a place you can get to it. Now you can see why I'm wearing gloves. And put a little oil on the lip of the new one so it slips and doesn't stick. And as you can see, it just spins on. Get a paper towel and make it the last few turns so it's tight. You don't want it slipping off. And always put the right amount of oil in. This thing takes 4.7 quarts. Bottle's got a cool thing on the side so you can measure the quarts. So we'll just pour 4.7 quarts back in. And don't forget to recycle your old oil. If you ever wondered what I got these giant containers for, I pour the old oil in them, Then I take them to AutoZone and they recycle them for free. Then put all this plastic crap back on. Just a beauty cover, but what the heck, it came with it. So now you know all about Honda's Earth Dreams technology and how it can become a nightmare for you if you don't take care of it right. Okay, we got an almost new 2022 Honda Civic. What do you get for what you pay? They've sold millions and millions of these things. Now the dealer kind of took advantage of them. They hit them for about $4 grand more than what the list was. He paid $24,040 out the door. That includes $1,095 destination, which to me is BS. And it says 40 miles a gallon. He just got 40 miles a gallon driving here from Kansas, so it's not lying. As you can see right here, it is 2 liter. It's naturally aspirated. It does not have a turbo, but it does have a CVT transmission, and the owner says now he's used to it. But I haven't seen any problems with them yet. I'm not really a CVT fan, but everyone's going to them. 40 miles a gallon on the highway for a zippy little car like that, you really can't argue. It does have a minor oil leak, and you can see, that's what I hate about modern cars. See this goop here? Guess what that is? It's silicone sealer. Well, they're gonna have to replace that free. They didn't put the silicone sealer on right. That's the problem with silicone sealer. You put it on, you tighten them on, a lot of it comes out, sometimes too much comes out. It's got a tiny drip, nothing outrageous, but to have a new vehicle like this and have it leaking like that, that's something that you used to never see in Hondas. They used to have gaskets. They'd last years and years and years. This thing's only a year old now, and it's got a little bitty leak. More an annoyance than anything else. But it kind of shows that Honda's quality, maybe it isn't what it used to be. Now, this particular one was made in Canada, as you can see right here, and right here. It came from Elliston, Ontario. And you can see the transmission indeed was made in Mexico. So let's hope that CVT lasts. I haven't seen problems yet, but you never know. Push button start. Now, yes, it does have the electronic parking brake. I hate these things, but they're all going to it. And the transmission, as you can see, they do pretend there's gears. It doesn't have any gears. It's a CVT transmission. You can do it economic if you want to get better gas mileage, and you have the little green tree, and then otherwise it is normal if you push it to normal. First thing you're gonna notice, smooth as can be, no shaky. Now, granted, this baby's new, you know, it's only got 12,261 miles on it. And I do have to say the cloth seats are immensely comfortable. For a Civic, a lot of leg room in the back. You can see he's got all this junk coming from Kansas. He did run over a rake on a highway that fell off a truck. He had to have the front tires replaced. You can't blame the vehicle on that. We'll see how it handles on the highway if that created any problems. Now, he wanted the base model, so as you can see, those are hubcaps. They're steel wheels there. He likes steel wheels. So really, they kind of hit him for an awful lot. 24 for a base model one. Now the backup camera works pretty good. It's kind of like the Toyota though. It's kind of out of place. It doesn't fit the rest of the car. I would have liked a dash integrated one instead of this sticking out. But what can you do? Now, let's see what the CVT can do. Still feels relatively zippy. And as we corner, it's a Honda. It's got pretty good cornering, doesn't oversteer or understeer. We'll give it a little gas. And it takes off quite well, I do have to say. Now, it's not as fast as a regular geared transmission because it doesn't have any gears inside. So when you stop on it, you don't get the gear shift that you get in a normal car. And it does, once you get going a little bit faster, tend to over rev. A lot of these CVTs, they just over rev when they're taking off. See, it revs real high. You wouldn't get that in a geared transmission. But then again, in a geared transmission, you're not going to be getting 40 miles a gallon driving around either. Take it out to the countryside here. Nobody's coming. Here we go. We're headed to our little drag strip. Okay, there's nobody behind us. Look around, nobody. Here we go to the drag strip and go. Not overwhelming. You see it did a fake shift there. Now, it does take off decently, but at very high RPMs. That's the problem with the CVT transmissions. They're not really geared for fast takeoff. They're more for gas mileage. Now, let's see. We're going 46, 45. Let's see what happens in passing gear. We'll hit it. You see it revs high and it takes off. You get going zippy enough. It's not bad. I personally would prefer an actual geared transmission. Not necessarily a manual shifter, but one that had regular gears. But this is what Honda's gone to it, just like Toyota. You can only get a Corolla now with a CVT. You can't get one with an actual automatic transmission. You can still get a Toyota Camry with a 8-speed transmission, and you can get a regular RAV4 non-hybrid with an 8-speed transmission. But with the Civics and with Toyota Corollas, CVTs, that's pretty much all there is if you're buying a new car. And I do have to say, this Tri is better than the earlier Hondas. Has a lot more acceleration, I'm not going to argue that, and gets really good gas mileage. I'm personally just not a fan. It's a fun little car to drive in the twisties, though, I do have to say. And as lightweight as these Civics are, the braking systems are more than adequate for any kind of driving you're going to run into. Smooth as silk idling, you can see the engine's still running. It's just smooth. You feel like the engine's not even running. And here we go again, taking off, give it a little gas. It actually makes a lot more noise than it does acceleration. That's why I don't like CVT transmissions. I'm a driver and I like a serious driving car. I just don't like this high revving slippage. It's not for me. You can see me driving like a maniac because gas mileage has gone from 40 miles a gallon to 36.7 miles, and I've only driven about 1.5 miles so far, so you can make the gas mileage go down if you drive like a maniac, even with a CVT transmission. Let's have the lane departure. See, now it's saying lane departure. It's warning me. It's made the steering wheel shake to warn me. So that system's working pretty good. And it does have the speed limit too. Long, boring light. Here, up, there it goes. At least we got a green arrow. And here we go on a little curvy road. Does make a lot of noise going, but it goes. And like I say, it's a nice handling car. I just personally would like it to have actual gears. It would be a much more enjoyable and accelerating driving experience than the CV transmission that basically makes the engine rev too high and makes a lot of noise. So there is a possible problem. This baby's transmission was made in Mexico. Always makes me kind of wonder. I gotta say, road noise is about average for a small sedan. I'd say that it's about the same sound as a Toyota Corolla. My son's Toyota Corolla sounds about the same bit of loudness. Now really, this 2022 Honda Civic goes a long way from the original Honda Civic. I worked on them and drove them. But my question is, has it really gone far enough for all those years and changes that have gone on? Nah. Basically, I'd say the transmission is a step backwards myself. So what do I think of this 2022 Civic? Well, let me tell you. Okay, $24,000. It's a lower priced car. I don't like the CVT transmission. And the owner, he's not happy that it not only doesn't even have an oil warning light, it doesn't have a temperature gauge either. They're kind of cheapening up. A 2006 Honda Odyssey van. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, this is the man's second Odyssey van. He bought the first one, and then after a while, Honda couldn't fix stuff on it, and he went out and got another one. And he's still kicking himself in the rear end because he said, I should have listened to you and not worried about saving $5 grand buying this instead of buying a Sienna. Find out the Siennas are a lot better. But he bought this, and it's got 160-something thousand. It still runs okay. Now, he wants to know whether he should keep it or not, so we're going to analyze the whole van. As I went through his records, when he was younger, he was more foolish, and they took it to the Honda dealer. And they even ripped them off and sold him a catalytic converter in the past for this thing. And I said, does it burn oil? He says, no, it doesn't burn any oil at all. They obviously ripped them off. The only thing that ruins the cats on these things are if they burn oil, carbon builds up and ruins the cat. So they probably sold him a cat he didn't need. If you're looking at one of these, and you saw my video that I made earlier about Honda cylinder deactivation, look under the hood. Most of these all have V6s, and sometimes they put 4s, but they're too slow. But you see, this is a 3.5 VTEC. That's the better engine. The higher level trims than this have cylinder deactivation, which is not a good thing. A lot of them it makes them burn oil. If you saw the video I made a few weeks back, guy had one, and he said, hey, it was burning oil. So I had the cylinder deactivation system deactivated, so it didn't work anymore, and it stopped burning oil when it burned oil before. These don't have oil burning problems. It's got 160,000 miles on it, doesn't burn any oil. They're very good engines. Just realize one thing, Honda's still living in the dark ages. They're still using rubber timing belts on these things. This is an '06. And maybe some excuse, but the new ones are still using rubber timing belts. You got to change every 100,000 miles. And yes, they are interference engines. The belt breaks, pistons hit the valves, bend things, expensive. So you got to change the belt every 100,000 miles to be safe. Nobody else on the planet is really doing it anymore, but Honda just doesn't retool them to put timing chains. I don't know, they're crazy. That's the way they are. Now, the reason people buy these things is because they have a tremendous amount of space, carrying space. There's all kinds of space in these things. You look inside, even the old one has automatic doors. You got all kinds of room. Now you can put other seats in the back. He's got bicycles instead. These carry a tremendous amount of anything you want. And at the same time, an old one like this, you got 26.5 miles a gallon driving here from Pennsylvania. And he generally gets around 17 driving in town. You can't argue that. Now you're always going to get lower in town. They're boxy, they're big, heavy, you're stopping and going. But on the highway, 27 miles a gallon for something this big. You know, even the modern ones aren't all that much better unless you're going into a hybrid system, and then the money gets higher and higher. Repairs get more and more complex. This thing hasn't needed that many repairs, other than the catalytic converter that probably didn't even need to be done because he went to the dealer. He's learned his lesson. Now he has a private mechanic who used to be a Toyota mechanic. Honda's Toyotas, what the heck. So he works on them and he doesn't rip them off. Now these things can last. We'll start it up. There's only one thing. He says the air conditioning rattles. So let's put the AC on. Now that noise you hear is the air conditioning compressor. Now it works perfectly fine. He's got a gauge, the pressures are fine, it blows plenty cold, but it's been making this noise for years and years. He knows eventually the compressor's gonna break. Honda air conditioning systems always had weak compressors, that's to be expected. But it still works, and it's still the original one. So, I mean, yeah, eventually you're gonna have to change it. If you don't like that noise, either turn up the stereo or put another compressor on it, or don't use the AC. Hey, the guy lives in Pennsylvania. Doesn't get all that hot in Pennsylvania for very long. Now you can see, as this is more or less a base model, it's got the cloth seats. If you're cheap like me, get cloth seats. They hold up. If this had been a leather one, this would be all ripped and torn and shredded. No, it's not. And they had kids running through this for years, and they're still in good shape. The cloth can really take it. Big old trunk. He's got the back seats folded down. Look at this. He's got his bikes in here. He didn't have to take the wheels off. Everybody knows it's a pain flipping those wheels and moving. They fit in the back of this thing, and it's still got the second row seats. Now this baby's been in Pennsylvania its whole life. You can see the alloy wheels are pitted. You could polish and paint them if you want. They're still there. They don't leak air. And when we look at the undercarriage, it's still real solid. Realize one thing about Honda. Sure, the old 170s, they were rust buckets, right? Honda, just like Toyota, they know how to rust prevent their cars. This thing isn't rotting away. It's not something you really got to worry about on the later model ones. Unless you live by the ocean and you drive through the water all the time. I mean, people in Galveston, Texas, they're going to rust out regardless if you drive on the beach all the time. The salt and the water gets on. The mist from the sea, if you live there, is going to rot them away. But just regular Pennsylvania driving, this thing's still relatively rust-free, even though it's an '06. He wants to see if this thing is worthwhile to keep. We're going to plug in the OBD plug. So we'll plug it in here, turn on our little fancy Japanese-only scan tool. I like these standalones a lot better. Put them on a phone. They might be okay for some stuff, but they're slow. A lot of times the software doesn't work. They can't access as much. Spend the extra $100 and get one like this. This particular one is an F401. It's only for Japanese. PS701 Pro. It's only for Japanese. I wrote Japanese only, so I don't get confused. Now this is going through 47 different things. It does a lot. And all the 47 scans, gone through them all. So the engine, everything's okay. The ABS system, you don't expect it to be working on a car this old. So let's see what the codes are. The owner just said it works. It triggered on him, but it says the right wheel speed sensor is a malfunction, left wheel speed sensor failure, right rear speed sensor failure, left speed sensor, voltage current high, brake fluid level low. So, I mean, he really doesn't care. We'll just clear the codes and see if any of them ever come back. And the only other failure is the body control module has a code, so we will see what that says. It's thinking, and we'll see what the body code is. And that's another low voltage. The battery ever got low, it'll trip the codes. I'm sure he's replaced the battery a few times in his car. What a lot of people don't understand is if you do not reset everything with a fancy machine like this, those codes will be there 10 years later. So if you ever know a mechanic like me, once every few years, have him go through your car. If you find stuff like this, have him erase all the codes, and then the next time you have it looked at, if those codes are gone, it was just because the battery was low and was replaced sometime in the past. Now, if you really want to be a fanatic when you change the battery, you can pay a guy like me to change all the codes, set it to 0 after the battery change. Then you don't have to worry about it. So basically, it's in pretty good shape, so let's start it up. And we'll look at live data, because live data is going to give you all kinds of information of what shape the car is. He wants to know, should he keep this thing? It's a knock-around vehicle now. His kids are grown up and stuff, but he likes it as a knock-around vehicle. He can fit all his bikes in it, go all over the place. It's got scratches on it already, so you don't have to worry about being mad with the shiny new vehicle when some scumbag in a Walmart parking lot decides to smash into the side of your car. So we'll go to live data, select all. You can see even on this older one, you got an awful lot of information. The air-fuel ratio is perfect. Almost. It's 1.00.99. You can't get much closer than that. 0.99 to 1.00. The short-term fuel trim is only 1%. It's running 1% lean. Who really cares on something that's this old? And on bank 2, it's 1.05. And that's pretty close to perfect. One is off 1%, one is off 1.05%. So that's pretty even considering that tiny amount of difference. Battery's fine, it's charging. As you can see, there's an awful lot of information on these. We're only at the C's. 6 cylinders, no misfires. They're all running perfectly. So it's a Honda. You expect these things to last a long time. This one's holding up quite well. All that mileage, still running really well. Now, the owner just told me at around 90,000 miles, he changed the water pump and the timing belt because it's an interference engine. So he's done what he's supposed to do. If he wants to be a fanatic, at 189, he could change it again. Who knows how many miles he's putting on it, but that's the one thing you got to worry about. It is an interference engine. It doesn't have a chain. The belt will fly off and the pistons will hit the valve. So that's the one thing you got to worry about on these. So we'll take it for a road trip. He's worried about wheel bearing noise and different things. So here we go, and I'll listen. Now it still rides pretty good. Going down the road, it's not bouncing too bad. Interesting enough, it's still got 4 original struts on it, except one. His honest mechanic, not the dealership, they tried to sell on the farm. His honest mechanic said the spring is broken on one of the back ones. So he even left the original strut in there, and he just replaced the broken spring, and it still rides quite well. Now he's worried about noises, but I'm listening. A very, very tiny little bit of humming from the right front, but I wouldn't worry about it. I had a customer with a Honda, had noise 5 times as loud, and 4 years later, he was still driving it down the road. I wouldn't bother with changing them yet. Now, it's typical that the right front wears out first, because when you're driving, what do you see? Right in front of you is the left front. When you hit holes, you usually hit them with the right front because you don't see the perfect lineup, and that's what you hit the holes with. My wife's always hitting holes with the right front of her car. It drives me nuts when I'm riding around. Bang! But it's a Toyota and it's still going, so it's an 07, and we hadn't had to replace the wheel bearings on it yet. Now, he does have a little whistling noise when he accelerates, but it's not whistling, it's bearing noise. The alternator's making a humming. We saw it's putting out. Charges, it goes perfectly fine, so who really cares if it finally goes out? Just like his air conditioning compressor. He says it's been making that rattly noise for years now, and it still blows cold. Like I say, Hondas have weak air conditioning. You expect that on these things. It still blows cold. It's still the original one, so you can't really complain. Complain about anything if you want to, but it doesn't really make sense with this mileage, and it still works. So what's the truth about this Odyssey van? Well, like I said, he was kicking himself because he saved $5 grand, didn't get a Sienna van, but for him it wasn't that bad. He's got the engine that doesn't have the cylinder deactivation, so it doesn't burn oil. The right front wheel bearing is a little worn, but he's kind of touchy on that. I wouldn't even have thought about it until I listened to it. Just a tiny little bit of wear. So he'll keep this car. His wife's got a Camry hybrid that they take all over the place. gets better gas mileage. He recently changed the automatic transmission fluid in this and in his Toyotas. The Toyotas, he took out the fluid and he said, am I doing something wrong? It's still all clean. And when he took this out, it was dirty as can be. And he put in new fluid and he hasn't had any transmission problems. It shifts perfectly fine now. He's lucky on that. But he says he drives like an old man, and his wife drove most of the mileage with kids in the car and was cautious. So really, a lot of the Odyssey van problems are hot rodders. The customers I had in Houston that burn out their trannies, they used them for business. They loaded them with weight. They were hot rodders, peeling out, driving like lunatics. And that, of course, is going to wear the transmission out further. So, in this case, it was dirty, but it's still working okay. If you are looking for one of these, remember, don't get the ones that have cylinder deactivation. And have a guy like me check it out with a scan tool like I did in this video to see if it's got any kind of transmission code problems, because a lot of them do get transmission problems. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.